That's not what I have over there. So is that the feel or is that
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ASU California Center Broadway at the historic Herald Examiner Building in downtown Los Angeles. With great respect, ASU, Zócalo Public Square, and the LA Local acknowledge the Yuhaviatum, the first people of this ancestral and unceded territory of Yaangna that we know as downtown Los Angeles. We honor their elders, past and present, and the Yuhaviatum descendants, who are part of the Gabrieleño Tongva and the Fernandeño Tataviam nations. We recognize that the Tongva are still here, and we are committed to lifting up their stories, culture, and community. As Ku'uyam, we recognize our responsibility and obligation to care for their land. I'm Moira Shuri, Executive Director of Zócalo Public Square, a unit of ASU Media Enterprise. At Zócalo, our mission is to connect people to ideas and to each other. Everything we do is free. Everyone is welcome. Arizona State University, our parent company, is committed to opening up the restored Herald Examiner building to the community. And now I'm going to introduce Bill Gates, Director of the Mechanics of Democracy Lab at ASU.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ASU California Center. We're thrilled to have you. As Moira said, my name is Bill Gates, and I am the director of the Mechanics of Democracy Laboratory at ASU, which was started in 2024. And our mission is to support current elections officials and help encourage those who desire to become elections administrators in the future. So we're really excited about today's event. We're going to be focused all day long on how AI is affecting elections and, frankly, how it can help improve elections. We are very much focused on AI for good, as well as being focused on making sure that we have the appropriate security precautions in place when AI is being used. I want to thank Moira, Zócalo. I want to thank the entire team here at ASU California Center for their help in getting everything put together. This is a wonderful facility, and we're excited to have you all here today. We have many partners for today's program, including the Elections Group, which is one of our partners, and the AI and Elections Boot Camp that we'll be pivoting to in the afternoon. We also want to thank Brennan Center and Emmett Strategies. And as well, we want to thank the students. This is going to be our first AI and Elections Boot Camp where we're going to be welcoming students into the process and helping us to potentially develop AI powered tools that will help improve elections. So, but first and foremost, I just want to emphasize my gratitude and the gratitude of everyone at the Mechanics of Democracy Laboratory for our elections officials from around the country who are here today. We salute your service. We know it is difficult, but we also know how important it is to our democracy. So thank you for sharing the day with us today. And now I'll turn it back to Moira. My apologies. All right. Well, another one of our partners for today's event is LA Local. And so we're very excited to have LA Local helping to lead the presentation today. And with that, I'll turn it over to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Hi, my name's Kristen Muller, and I'm the executive editor of the LA Local. We're a new nonprofit newsroom we launched about a month ago, and we have a simple but ambitious vision, and that is to connect LA neighborhoods together, one neighborhood at a time. We focus on neighborhoods for several reasons. One, we believe that's where the loose ties that strengthen democracy exist. So what do I mean by loose ties? I mean the people you interact with outside of work, home, school. So the barista that you see every morning, the guy that's always walking his dog at the same time of day, the coach that always steps up to lead the kids when it comes to soccer season. We also think neighborhoods are arguably where democracy is still functioning. It's the level at which you can get involved and have a real impact on whether the building that is proposed goes up on the corner or whether there's new green space added to the community. And last, we focus on neighborhood because when we asked Angelenos what they wanted from their local news source, they told us they wanted more information about the places they actually lived. We heard from nearly 1,000 Angelenos through a series of surveys, focus groups, and we did all this before we hired reporters because we really wanted to understand what should we be doing that would make a difference. And what we heard was really clear. People were struggling to find information about the place where they actually live and vote. And that's not just LA. As you might imagine, the finding has national backing. In fact, this week a report came out that says 44% of Americans have difficulty getting information about their own neighborhoods. That's compared to just 26% for national news. What that means is that your neighbor is as likely to have a strong opinion on Jeffrey Epstein than they are on the decisions before the local planning commission. And this matters enormously for elections, and it's why we're here today, because AI's role in elections really hinges on the role that we play. You know that local races often come down to hundreds of votes, and that local officials have a bigger impact on people's daily lives than people in Washington. But if we can't find reliable, trustworthy information about local candidates or ballot measures, then there's a problem. It's part of a civic infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt. So at the LA Local, we see information at the neighborhood level as vital as clean water, safe roads. Because democracy can't function when people can't get reliable information about the decisions being made in their names on their corners. So as we discuss AI's impact on elections today, I'd encourage you to think hyperlocally, because that's where the information gaps are widest, where voters feel most lost, and frankly, where AI could do either the most harm or the most good. So now we'll move on to our panel, and we'll call them out from the green room. Unless that introduction scared them, and they've all gone to the local bar. No, there they are. Okay, come on stage. So joining us today, we have Darwin Maston. He's the founder and CEO of Synaptic Spike Venture Studios and TwinWise AI. Michael Moore is the Chief Information Security Officer for the Arizona Secretary of State's office. And Gauri Ramachandran is the Director of Elections and Security on the Elections and Government team at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU. Welcome. Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
So we're going to do some level setting for both the viewers online and those in the room, because I think when we say AI, people conjure up all different kinds of things. And the reality is most of us are already using AI in our daily lives. So I'll start with you, Darwin. How do you want to frame AI in the context of this discussion in elections?
So when we're talking about AI within elections, I want to talk about the type of content that's going to be generated, that what you're going to be seeing and dealing with out in the media, what's coming to you in your mail and all of that. So for my perspective on artificial intelligence, when we're talking about this, it's the machine that's going to personalize every aspect of the election in different ways, and how that's delivered is going to be important. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's everything to me, from how the voting poll is working to how the text on your phone is being submitted through an SMS.
Michael, is that how you see it, or is there more of an impact on actual mechanics of voting?
Right. So Darwin is much more of an AI expert than I am. I'm a boots-on-the-ground election official, a chief information security officer, as you already mentioned. So to me, when I'm thinking about AI, I'm not hyper-focused on like the literal definition of AI, and I'm thinking more of like typically large language models, things like ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude, and how they can be used to increase efficiency and productivity and accuracy for election officials.
Great. Gowrie?
Yeah, I think when I think of AI as it relates to elections, I think, as I think many people do, a lot about generative AI, because that has such a strong potential to impact the information and the quality of the information that's available to voters. I also think of that because it has such a strong ability to impact, unfortunately, the sort of disinformation or false information that voters and the public in general might be on the receiving end of. So that's the main kind of case I'm thinking about, but I know that there's also so many ways that many forms of AI might be used to improve efficiency in elections.
So let's dig into that a little bit, because I think, at least for me, when you hear AI in elections, you immediately go to a point of dread. You don't think, oh, this is going to be great. So what are we'll start off with some of the main challenges that you're seeing evolve with AI, especially as we're coming up to the midterms. And then we can get into some of the potential benefits of it. But when you look at what we're facing over the next 6 months, what are your greatest concerns?
So first swing for me, certainly before 2024, I was much more concerned about the weaponization of AI. I see a lot more positive aspects now, but I'm still concerned about it. But the ability to create synthetic content, deepfakes, whether that's video, audio, text, is more deadly than I think folks would naturally appreciate. I think the video tends to be more sexy and shocking to folks. But you're now able to craft narratives where maybe you type in all caps normally, and that's not something that's going to be very convincing to other people. Maybe your arguments have logical inaccuracies. You now have a tool that is your friend that wants to help you write better and communicate with more people and can make you more articulate, can tighten up your arguments, even if they're still false arguments. So one particular cybersecurity example that we've seen is phishing email has ramped up in quality greatly. Today, literally this morning, I had another instance where our finance team is reporting to us we're receiving these spearfish that are impersonating communications for folks inside of our office. There's an understanding of the structure of who reports to who. These are completely fabricated conversation that could be written by hand by a human being, but why would you do that when you have a tool like this that can make you much more coherent, write a narrative? It's a fake conversation back and forth that eventually gets sent to our finance team, trying to trick them into paying a purchase order. And it's something that security tools are not going to pick up because it's just text. It's an invoice scam. And one of our counties in Arizona, Yavapai, just experienced a finance scam. I don't know for a fact that AI was involved in that, but it seems likely. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
And that's not necessarily someone trying to affect the outcome of an election. That's just the regular stuff that we all get when you're the prince in Nigeria or whatever it may be, what version of that.
If you steal tens of thousands, millions of dollars from small, medium, or large counties, you are impacting the ability to run an election. If they don't have the funds because they've been stolen from them, it's a lot of damage.
So Darwin, that kind of goes into what you were talking about, the personalization or an attempt to personalize one-to-one information.
Yeah, so I agree with Michael and definitely what Gowrie was saying earlier. I echo that on generative AI and personalization. And I think it's because of that that my biggest concern when it comes to AI and elections is lack of consumer usage and base knowledge. And it really is, because I think the messaging in 2023 was wrong. Generative AI is not a magic thing that does everything. It is a simple tool, and really all consumers are now builders. You don't get to consume anything from generative AI. Generative AI doesn't exist without your input. So what you put into it is exactly what you get out of it. And the problem I have, even within industry, like people within companies, is that they form a solid opinion from using a free version of ChatGPT 2 years ago. Your opinion yesterday is outdated today. Like, you cannot have a static opinion about AI, how useful it is. And granted, yes, 2 years ago, if your opinion was ChatGPT lies, it makes things up. That was true if you used the free version and you didn't know a thing about prompting. But now it's an entirely different system. And that's where personalization comes in. Any data about you that's out there, even locally for politics, is information that can be used to personalize messaging to you. So, I mean, this is marketing 101, right? In a way of trying to target a message to a certain segment of people. But that segment is now one. That means there are a million different personalized messages that are going out to every individual. That is the level that we are dealing with right now. And if you're not using AI, if you're not familiar with it, and if you're not getting in there deep just to understand the type of content you get from it, you may not notice these. The subtlety of phishing attacks or personalized messaging is starting to go under the radar because we're not doing the due diligence of learning ourselves. And I think the only way you can combat that type of predatory AI is with protective AI.
Can I briefly just, I totally agree with Darwin, and I think of AI, it's sort of like an automation wizard, right? Like you've got this assistant that's helping you automate whatever you want to automate, and specifically to what you just said, spearfish, targeted single target spearfish, that's going to be so much more prevalent instead of this nonsense that we get that's totally garbage and everybody knows, like whoever falls for this kind of thing. It's going to be more and more, they're going to your LinkedIn profiles, your social medias, and making a message just for Darwin, just for Gallery. And you may think you're going to catch it, but it's going to be more and more convincing and harder to tell what's real and what's not.
Gary, are there any laws in place to prevent this from happening? Who should be monitoring this?
So, you know, the federal government has really not done enough to do something about this, right? To regulate AI, to protect society against its dangers, and specifically to protect democracy against some of the dangers of AI. The states have really been taking the lead. We track sort of AI legislation that's meant to protect democracy. So, for instance, legislation that might prohibit deep fakes about a candidate without some kind of disclosure on it, you know, that says this is a deep fake, or legislation that clarifies that the developers of AI are not going to get sort of like immunity from lawsuits just because, like, if someone uses their product to create misleading content or content that even suppresses people's right to vote. That's really an area where the states have been taking the lead, long term, it really would be better to have, some sort of federal intervention in this space. But states, a number of states have been attempting to prohibit that kind of content. We're still in really early stages, though. The enforcement of those laws they're so new that we haven't seen a lot of that yet.
I would say even with the disclosures, I saw AI-generated ad, or I guess it was a campaign spot for governor of, I don't know if it was governor of New York, but it was basically an opposition ad where the candidate had manipulated his opponent to say, I did all these things, and this is, I'm confessing basically to all these terrible things I did. And clearly it's manipulated, but the comments, people did not care that it was manipulated. They thought it was clever. They thought it was funny. There was a lot of engagement around it. And so does disclosure really have the effect that we would hope it would have? I'll ask you, Darwin, because you're the human behaviorist amongst us.
I think, well, one, yes. I think disclosure will have an impact and has an effect on that. I think when there's not disclosure, then there's an unknown. And those comments could have gone an entirely different way. And I think what you see there is also a little bit of a bandwagon effect. Like, what was the first comment? First comment was about, this is funny, this is interesting. Yeah. It drives the rest of the commentary. Where did that first comment come from? It could have been AI generated by the same people that created the post. The point now is the information, a disclosure is one thing. Doing your research is an entirely different thing. And that's why like protective AI is you using AI to understand things yourself.
Okay, but what does that mean? What is protective AI? Like a nuts and bolts example.
Do you want to try first?
Sure. From a cybersecurity perspective, everyone's going to immediately fall asleep, so my apologies. But first off, you don't want to get rid of humans. Don't think like, okay, we're going to get AI, no more security analysts, we don't need them anymore. These are tools that will increase their ability to do work and their accuracy. There are already way too many alerts for security teams to respond to every single one, to investigate every single one. Tools like these will help make sure that what's important gets bubbled up to the top and that controls get tuned, more fine-tuned to eliminate false positives and focus on real things that folks can respond to.
And so I'm going to follow up with that because when you talk about protective AI, I think there's two layers, and I think that's one of them. That's why I booted it to Michael first. I think the second is the interactive layer. And so the only way that individuals can control AI or really influence that is through the training layer. And any individual can do that now. Any person in this room can go to a different type of AI website that produces agents and be able to create an agent. What's underlying there is going to be what matters. And so training layer is what is the data that went into it. And so if you're using somebody else's foundation model, you don't have control over that. It's usually the internet, sometimes some specialized knowledge. But if you control the AI, you control the training data, you control what's going into it, and are able to create an aspect of what matters to you. You know what you value out of politics and out of democracy, so use that to your advantage to parse the information that you're coming with. There's no way that we can have a fact-checking site, like a static source of truth, to fight a million different potential lies and marketing that's going out to every person. The only way to do that is for humans to take control of the narrative that they're hearing. And so I would say to do this, protective AI is not listening, it's being part of the conversation through AI. This is technology that we have, not disappearing now. How do we do this with the internet? How do we do it with books? It's just a place where you have to respond more quickly. And so if you haven't been using AI or you've been using a free version, please stop. Please start using it. Pay $20 a month because what you get for free is, that's like coffee in the hotel this morning for me in my room. I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to complain about it because I know it's free. But I'm going to go down to the cafe or somewhere else and get my other coffee that I really want, that I know has value, that's going to have some meaning, and that brings that type of experience. So when you want to understand AI, when you want to be able to protect other people, you need to be part of it. As I said, there's no more consumption. There's only builders.
It's one of the messages that I will mention to folks when we do the bootcamp today is like, if you want to understand a tool, use the tool.
So does this mean I need to go home and tell Claude that I love democracy over and over and I love democracy and just like cut and paste it? Like literally, what are the prompts? What are the conversations I would need to be engaging in to shape that model? Because I am but one person and it is being used by hundreds of millions of people, I would imagine.
So the number one thing with AI, if you're going to use it, ask questions. It's not a search bar, it's not a command line. You need to ask questions, and you need to ask complex, personal questions if you want personal information. It really is that. And I often tell people, like, you need to ask questions and do this, but remember, AI isn't it's not answering your question. It's picking up where you left off. It's the same predictive text that's been on your phone for the last 20 years, which if you didn't know when that first came out, they had to speed it down 50x because nobody trusted it. They thought it was too scary. So getting involved with that, asking the right questions and asking questions of AI is the only way that you're able to dig deeper. That's the way that you break that barrier, is be curious.
And not just ask questions. Something I learned from you, Darwin, is tell it to ask you questions and start answering things about yourself. And I've found that the one that I pay for personal use, it's way dialed in to me now that I've fed it more information about who I am.
Gary?
Although one thing I do feel a responsibility to jump in with is if your question is about the mechanics of elections, like when do I vote, where do I vote, what are the results that are coming in, I would say it's still the safest thing to do and really the only thing that you should be doing as voter in this country is going to the trusted source, which is your local election official, your state election official. That is really, there a lot of the major sort of AI companies made some commitments in the last election cycle to do things that were protective around elections, but their sort of transparency around like whether they even met those commitments and those sorts of things was suboptimal, I would say. So still the safest thing to do is get that sort of information from your local or state election official.
The only thing I'll add to that is like it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. You can use generative AI to help you do research like what is my local election office? Similar to how you might Google for it, you could talk to an AI and say what site do I go to, and then check that source yourself and go to your hopefully .gov website that is your local county site.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between seeking information and seeking answers. AI is not the answer. It may not have the answer, but use it as a tool to connect to those answers and that information that you can judge yourself.
This is really great preparation for us as individuals, and I will say, like, it sounds like a lot of work for people who already have a lot of work in their lives and maybe don't have subscriptions. But I want to also talk a little bit about how, when I say local, I guess state and local officials are prepping for this next election cycle. And I know, Gary, you've been the Brennan Center issues a lot of guidance. So I'm wondering if you could say, like, what are you telling people to start prepping for? Or how to be most prepared in this moment, especially when news keeps coming week after week about different election officials across the country and how they're having to respond to conspiracies about voting irregularities.
Well, one thing I would say is that, when these tools started becoming really, really popular and free versions started becoming widely available in 2023, we made a series of recommendations, and they still hold true today, I think, and they're really based in the fact that, there's been bad actors who are trying to undermine elections and undermine election security, intimidate voters for a long time. Their ability to do that has now been supercharged, made cheaper, made more sophisticated in some of the ways Michael and Darwin were describing. And so our recommendation has really been for election officials to double down on all the election security that they have been incorporating into their work for the last decade. So training for employees to beef up their ability to resist those spear phishing attacks, it's more important now than ever, right? Having people's passwords not be go Dodgers, that's not a good idea, right? So strong passwords, those sorts of things, more important than ever. So really doubling down on that election security, getting out there and really proactively informing voters about the election, about how your office runs, that helps make them more resilient against kind of disinformation about the election, falsehoods about results. All of that just has to be invested in more than ever. So that, I would say, is the big recommendation we started making, and it still holds true today. I do think that some of the in those last couple of years, I would say these personalization dangers, the sort of ability for people to use AI to manipulate people, that seems like it's only increased. And so, doubling down on those resiliency measures is just more important than ever. And for that reason, it's more important than ever that election offices be adequately funded. Election offices election officials are somewhat lower paid on average than people who have similar sort of executive positions, even in other parts of local government. It's so important. If we're going to ask election officials to do more on the security front, we should be providing them with the resources.
The top election security official in the country, though, is the federal level is not is not someone who's fighting actively disinformation, as I understand it. And I know you are not here in a political forum, but I'm wondering what kind of friction or headwinds does that, or does it even create it for the state and local level officials, because they are the ones that ultimately control elections. So does it have any side effects, impacts at the local level? Michael, I'll ask you, since this is your work.
Oh, geez. Yes. So we worked incredibly closely with CISA before March of 2024. They were a phenomenal partner.
And
I know
CISA, just for people who don't know?
the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, it's much easier to say CISA. They are the nation's risk advisor, right? They are the cybersecurity agency that supports the entire country. And they, for years, had been phenomenal partners. They provided lots of resources to us, both physical security and cybersecurity. And since March of 2024, there's been massive cuts. Folks know about DOGE. It's a shame, right? Cybersecurity is more important now than ever. Cybercrime is a huge, huge cash cow. I have heard, I haven't been able to independently verify, but basically if cybercrime were its own GDP, it would be like third place. And so like if folks were being mugged in the streets, like cutting law enforcement just doesn't make sense, right? And I think part of the problem with cybersecurity is that it's invisible to a lot of normal folks. So it's hard to see that gap is missing for a lot of normal folks. But they had previously been phenomenal partners. We've had to basically replicate their functionality in the state of Arizona. Things are going okay because we just lean more heavily on our state Department of Homeland Security and our National Guard, and we have, the National Association of Secretaries of State and informal relationships with folks in the room where we see threats out there and we're communicating them manually. But it would sure be nice to have that situation we previously had where the federal government really facilitated the conversations. So I don't want less of CISA, I want more of CISA. I'd like to see them reach that level that they were in 2024 and exceed it, double it.
What capability, when I think about, you're talking about the narratives and it's on, election officials to kind of be transparent about their procedures, but like that's communications work, that's comms work, that's essentially marketing. And that's really not the main function of the job. So I'm wondering, is it too much to expect local county or local election officials, whether it's your registrar or whatever, to be able to have that kind of forward-looking view and go on the offensive with their own narrative about this is how the process actually works? And if they can't do it, it's like, whose job is it?
I would say that, whether or not it's too much to expect, they've been doing it, right? So unfortunately, election workers and election officials have been sort of under an information attack for years now, and they have really been stepping up to the challenge. Some of the larger county election offices, like some of the large counties in Arizona, Los Angeles County, they have communications officials, right? But of course, many local election officials across the country are going to need to call upon sort of communication officials, maybe in a different agency within their county government or that sort of thing. But they really have been stepping up on that communications front and investing in it. And I do think most local election officials have always considered like voter education to be part of their job, right? So this is sort of an expansion of that. And in terms of, preparing for the communications, there's an organization, it's the Center for Safe and Secure Elections, a fabulous organization. It's a collaboration between election officials and state and local law enforcement to sort of prepare and communicate ahead of time about how to ensure that voters and everyone can vote safely. That organization has conducted about 45, I believe, what's called tabletop exercises with local election officials, and that's where they get together in a room, often with their counterparts in law enforcement, that sort of thing, and kind of do a dry run a sort of emergency or security threat, and sort of AI scenarios, like someone makes a deep fake video of you saying that election day has changed or something and distributes that. Those kinds of scenarios are run through. And part of what folks can do when they do those dry runs is practice the communications response and sort of say, you know, who would I call? Who would help me get that press statement out there? Like all of that sort of thing. So I do think it is kind of asking too much because election officials are not appropriately resourced, in my opinion, but they really are stepping up.
But the good news is, and we're going to touch on this immediately when we start the boot camp, is AI can be very helpful in speeding up your communications. If you have a comms person, do not replace them. They are better than using AI, especially right now. But if you're writing it yourself and that's not your primary job, this can help you craft tailored messages on multiple social media platforms all at once.
So let's get into some of the benefits, because I think there is, an idealized version of AI where, politicians, elected leaders, candidates are gathering insights about what people in their areas actually really need, right? And then shaping their platforms around those needs. Is that a likely scenario? Darwin, I'm going to ask you.
I think, so we want to talk about positive ways of using it.
Yeah.
In some ways.
What is like a nice future version where this is working for us and not something that we have to?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked that, because I'm going to jump to the end of my statement, which is I truly believe that used correctly, AI, by putting more humanity in it, AI will bring humanity closer together. I think this can unlock part of our next social evolution very clearly, and I see that a lot in the people on my team and the products that we're making. But as Michael brought up earlier, and Gowry's touched on, you can leverage AI, but using it instead as the sounding board partner is a huge differential. So officials going and bringing a speech or a program or some communications and asking, what inherent bias did I bring to this? Which of my constituents have I just missed or left out? How am I misrepresenting this, or is there a better way that I could handle this communication? So that's a good aspect of protective AI on an application sense, and how are you doing that there? It's also a way that for every type of disaster issue that's going to come up in an election, you can pre-mitigate that through almost any type of scenario. Your playbook and your run book are now exhaustive, and if something comes up that you don't have in that moment, you can AI it immediately, especially if you have your playbook there as data in your artificial intelligence system. You are now creating a growth loop of information that you can build on and continue to take forward.
So just a little bit more add on to that, to say it plainly, if you don't already have a continuity operations plan, it can help you start to templatize it. If you do already have a continuity of operations plan, you can literally feed it into an AI and say, hey, what am I missing? What reasonable things should I be accounting for that I have not in my area? Like California, there's some earthquakes. Is that in your continuity operation plan? I'm sure it's in Folks' plan here, but it can highlight things like that.
Gowry?
Yeah, I think that in terms of positive uses, making things more kind of user-friendly and putting them in plain English, obviously with human review, is I think a potential really great positive use for election officials. Maybe you have a voter information packet and get help identifying which parts of this might be confusing, to a layperson, which parts could be said a little more simply, and of course, checking to make sure it remains accurate, right? That's a really important function of humans in the election office, is ensuring, that the information they're putting out can be 100% trusted, but getting help with making things just accessible and simple for people, I think, is a really great potential positive use.
And I love that, by the way. Thank you, Gowry. And I think where you can even take this further into a place is that I don't work in elections. We all know that. I see the level of intensity and stress that is there. It's a very stressful and difficult job to do and an area to handle. So thank you all for your service in that. But being able to use also AI to help you reflect and take that moment And I don't mean use like ChatGPT as a therapist. I know lots of people do that. There are different potentialities of there. That's specifically why at TwinWise we're building a different aspect. So you have your own version of you to talk to in a very like whiteboard, soundboard type of sense and manner. But being able to pause and just let yourself be you and be human is very interesting, because at first it sounds odd, this is a computer, but at the same time, you're not automatically judged. The human response of like whoever is on the other end diminishes a lot. And so that's why I think if we pause and we really use AI as an amplification of the self, that you can really start to see how societal change can happen, and could happen quickly.
Very brief anecdote, is that okay?
Yeah,
Connected
please,
to what Darwin just said. So one of the joys that I find in reading a book is being able to talk about that book with other people. But if you're not in a book club and you want to just read whatever, you can talk to AI, and good news, if it's out there, it's probably read that book. So I've been able to have like really thoughtful conversations with something that's not a sentient being, that I still got real value from interacting with it and talking about different themes and things that I've seen in a book. So I found it to be a fascinating interaction.
How do you think, I mean, one of the things I mentioned in the opening remarks is, you know, at this hyper-local level, like there's a lot of value in having these in-person conversations. Yes, with an AI tool that's helpful for you, but like how does, or could AI helping people together when it comes to making decisions at election time at the hyper-local level? And I don't know what that would look like, but I'm just trying to think about, you know, how do we not like further hunker down into our information bubbles? And as you're describing it, it sounds really helpful, but I also imagine myself in a dark room, like talking to a computer, and it gets a little dystopian pretty quickly.
Can I take a first swing on this one again? Sorry, guys, I'm not trying to hog the conversation, but another anecdote. I had a family member who is of a different age bracket than me, a little bit older, and I sincerely wanted to connect with that person, and I was able to use AI to assist me in generating, like, what would be some good things to have conversations about. So it wasn't me hunkering down, I'm not going to talk to other people. I can literally use this tool to have meaningful interactions with that individual. And at the end of the day, they told me, like, this is the best conversation that I've ever had with you before. And I was like, that's amazing, that's fascinating.
Wow.
I mean, I think one thing that in my personal life, like, has made it easier for me to communicate with real people is translation functions, right? I think sort of bridging language divides is it's already pretty fantastic, the sort of capabilities of even, our handheld devices on that front. And I think that's something that one of the rare things that makes me feel sort of optimistic these days is that really amazing sort of, ability to bridge language divides.
And so actually I love bridging language divides. We actually call that the interpretation gap within cognition and within the areas I work. And I swear it's not a product plug. We have a very good example is that, so with our product, with TwinWise AI, we take an individual, we use a white glove service, sit down with you, and then let you sit down by yourself, and we create an AI of your mental architecture with zero data. We make an AI that thinks like you think, that reasons like you reason based upon your values, your motivations, what you've learned, all of that. But what we've built is also a cognitive API. And so an API in software is the thing that connects other things. And with that, this is where I really see a difference with humanity, because let's say, Kristen, I had a question for you, and I wanted to get your information as an expert, but I'm not a media expert or a journalist, so you could tell me that, but then maybe you'd have to explain all those terms and everything else. But through a cognitive API, if I asked your twin a question, through my cognition, I would get the most clear answer for me to understand, based upon how I learn, my perspectives, and my understanding. And that's an aspect that I think is incredibly useful. how much time in business and in politics is lost because you're waiting for a response from someone? How much time is lost because of assumptions or misconstruals, or the strategy just gets kind of bogged down somewhere in the conversation? But if you're able to have that ability to click through to get much clearer transparency to you, I mean, that's a game changer of an unlock. And that's why we're driving that specifically on the what brings people together. Like, human-led AI is the only AI that will actually be good for humanity.
Well, I want to thank you, but we are going to have to close our part and start taking some questions from the audience, which I'm sure there are a handful. We've got Maura over there in the corner with a mic for people who are...
Right. So we have some questions that have come in from the online chat room. If anyone in the room would like to ask a question, please just walk over here. So the first question is, are there specific US counties and states that are doing a particularly good job thinking about AI or even using it to run elections? Michael or Gauri?
I think it might be a good question for Michael. Yeah.
Oh, geez. Yes, there are a few folks that I think are leaders in the space. Certainly in Arizona, Secretary of State's office, we're trying to be as well and trying to work with our counties and make sure they're educated and help them use these tools as well. It's literally why we're doing the boot camp today, and we've done 2 others prior to make sure that election officials are able to understand how to use these tools. But very specifically, Ohio has stood up what's called EVA, which is a platform that is designed to basically look at election law specific to Ohio and be able to rapidly interface with their election officials and answer questions for them. And I'm going to be meeting with them soon to get a personalized demo and see if we can replicate that functionality in Arizona.
And is there a state that has entirely digital elections?
I can answer that one. No. Fortunately, in the U.S., we have very locally distributed elections, right? So they're very decentralized. And while that does lead to the kind of under-resourcing that I was talking about previously, it is actually a sort of inherent security measure that's in place in our elections, because if someone wants to attack our elections, they're going to have to attack a lot of different small election offices, small, polling places are really widely distributed across a county, that sort of thing. If we had a state that had completely digitized its elections, had something like online voting or something like that, it would create a sort of, they would be a massive target for someone who's trying to interfere in those elections with a cyber attack or that sort of thing. We don't have a state that has done that, and I think that's a really good thing. Yeah.
Hi, Moktik Kulkarni here. So I had a question about media. What I'm hearing from you guys is that everything's going to be personalized, everything's about you. So where do you see, let's say 10 years down the line, what sort of media environment are we looking at, and who pays for media organizations anymore?
Might be a good question for Kristen, actually.
Yeah.
So I think, as you were talking about using trusted sources of information for elections and going to the primary source, which is the registrar or whoever it may be, I think there's a potential and a pretty big opening for local news organizations to figure out how to add value. So I will give an example. LAist, the public radio station here, one of their highest performing stories during election time is how to vote on judges. And that's because no one knows how to vote on judges. And they're always that part of the ballot. You get there and it's all these names and you have no idea, right? So finding media outlets that can find a way to kind of explain, translate, hold people's hands through what a job is, what the actual job entails, where people come from, that's of value. And I think a lot of news organizations are starting to realize that, so that's an opportunity. But the reality is that a lot of media consumption now happens on social media. And so you really have to find ways to get that verified information out by working collaboratively, not just within a media organization, but with creators, with value-aligned organizations, the League of Women Voters, that kind. So I think you'll see some new and different kinds of collaborations and new and different kinds of ways of explaining to people what your vote actually means and why it matters. That's my platonic ideal.
Kristen, I'll also add Cal Matters, another nonprofit newsroom, does their Propositions in a Minute videos that explain all of our California ballot propositions. We have our next question.
Oh, wait, we have, I think Michael wanted to jump into.
Darwin first.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with that because when we talk about personalized media and personalized marketing, like, let's talk about the word that it should be is persuasive. Okay, and if it sounds just right or it sounds too good to be true, look at what you're reading, because if they're not discussing a trade-off, not a comparison, a trade-off, when you start to talk about the trade-offs of this versus that or this and the other, that's where you get more pure information. When you're starting to get things that are about comparatives, that are really leaning away, that are starting to guide you, that's persuasion. It's a very fine line on that, but it's the aspect of when it feels just right, you should go, why? Why does that feel just about right? Has it always felt that right? Probably not. Worth digging.
And if I could take a swing very quickly, these things need not be mutually exclusive, whether it's a political campaign or a media company. You could still have a reporter write an article, and you could have 10,000 subscriptions, and you could use tools like these to have custom messages that are delivered to each person, where every single story is altered without altering the facts to make it interesting, specific to the individual, right? Like, Gowrie, there's this culture fair going on, and I know that you like handcrafted items, and there's going to be mugs there because I know you like mugs. Like, you can literally have every single story be written for an individual, customized to them, using tools like this.
Our next in-person question.
Hi, thank you. This has been stimulating, but I'm horrified. As a lawyer,
That's good.
as a lawyer, I'm in the business of doing something like an election with every one of my cases, in that we're trying to get a result using the truth. And it's clear to me, you don't have to see Reshape the movie to understand the competition among competing truths is truly the heart of the election process. And if you took any of the things you people have been advising today into my practice, it would be a disaster. It would be a disaster, first of all, because of the amount of disclosure I would have to give an AI to have that kind of personalization that is being recommended. Moreover, all of the AI vendors are trying to use me as the source of the information that they're going to use in the future with other people, other lawyers, competing lawyers. So there's a huge problem even to have my investing time and money to create the kind of ideal AI we've been discussing. And now we're talking about a national problem. We have a true identifiable source of chaos to prevent any election from actually working out the way we were taught it should work out. How can AI help us with that? It seems to me that what you've been describing is the Achilles heel of any attempt to solve that problem, because if they'll have their AIs, those chaos makers will be knowing exactly what we can do with the technology and doing everything they can to foil it.
One thing I would say is that I do think you've highlighted why we really need a lot more in terms of regulation that's designed to protect things like democracy in the AI space than we've been getting from our governments, right? So one sort of area that some states are starting to look at is regulating the use of AI in chatbots that might be sort of communicating about political information with voters. At minimum, just to sort of disclose so that voters know that that's what they're communicating with, right? But there's pretty early attempts, right? There's not a lot of it's not like we have lots of examples when we track this at the Brennan Center of states that have sort of gotten into that space. So I do think one thing I think you've highlighted is the real need for lawmakers to pay attention to their role in sort of protecting us from that kind of manipulation.
Thank you for your statement and question. I think it's very powerful, and I agree with your concern. I'm certainly not saying that AI is sunshine, puppy dogs, and rainbows, right? It is a literal force multiplier, and adversaries will use it for nefarious ends. But I feel like strongly we fail to learn to use it at our own peril, and if we fail to learn how to use it, we'll not be able to anticipate how adversaries will use it as well. One of the things you touched on is basically like the root of PII and not feeding sensitive information, especially as a lawyer, into commercial AI, and I can't agree more. There is the capability to stand up an AI resource inside of your own organization, and that's something that we're investigating as well. There's certainly things that are completely fine to utilize a commercial AI for, but things that are incredibly sensitive, I would never recommend having your voter registration database like accessible for like Copilot or Gemini or anything like that. So I think I agree with your concerns, and I'm not trying to be flippant about them.
And I want to follow up on that specifically also because it's not all puppy dogs, sunshine, and rainbows through there, but also by your statement, happy to chat afterwards, there are half a dozen secure, lawyer-led, AI-based things that you can bring in that are totally controlled within your firm. And I've seen this change over the last 6 months where lots of different law firms are now bringing in AI and using that. Why? Because they've hired paralegals that are doing more work than the partners. And it comes down to a point of whether it's bringing it in to understand it or bringing it in to use it to amplify or bringing it in to replace. And I think, actually, if I could soapbox for a minute, I think one of the best points of AI is that we're having these conversations, very much specifically. Like, I like that Zócalo is hosting this as well because the public square, like the square idea is where everybody from a community came together to hear something and to share a singular reality. But now with all the personalization, the different aspects of AI, there's a million different realities that exist there. So come back together as people that you work with, people that you live next to, people in your community, and talk about it. Have these conversations. Learn more, question more, but be part of it. Because if you're on the outside, it's going to be a very different place to be in a month, in 6 months.
Thank you. It's actually time for us to close. Kristen, over to you for closing comments.
Well, I think that was a great way to end it. It turns out being a citizen is hard. And we all have a lot of work to do. So I want to thank our panelists here today. Thanks to Zócalo, the Brennan Center, ASU for hosting us. And we hope you stick around, ask more questions of our panelists, and enjoy the afternoon, which I understand has got a very lively workshop planned. Thank you.